Hey guys, what's up? It's OCM, and today we are going to be going over Samuro, the new melee assassin, coming at you guys next week. We have him on PTR, and we are going to go over his talents, his builds, his kit, his everything. We're going to cover it all, we're going to go through it, and we're going to take a look at this hero because he is pretty freaking cool. So, first thing that we're going to take a look at right off the bat, Samuro is a melee assassin, obviously, the Blade Master from Warcraft 3. Right off the bat, you're going to notice that he has pretty sweet attack speed. He goes at 1.67 attacks per second, so he strikes just a little bit quicker than one a second. His autos come in and tick at 204 apiece at level 20, the skills throughout the game starting at 94 at level 1, and every fourth auto, as is his passive, is a critical strike. Another thing to focus on with Samuro is that he does not have any self-sustain, so far as you can throw it and so far as you know it in HOTS right now. Samuro does not have any self-heals, he doesn't have any shields that he generates. But you have to keep in mind that he goes in, he hits hard, he hits fast, but he cannot take care of himself to a degree. We're going to show you how to maximize Samuro with all of his beauty and all of his flaws in 3 different builds that I have come up with that vary on skill level, but address each part of Samuro's kit that I think are the most notable and the coolest. The very first build that we're going to go into here has to do with his passive, and again, Samuro's passive is Advancing Strikes. This reads as basic attacks against enemy heroes. Increase your movement speed by 25% for 2 seconds. This is by far the easiest build to play on Samuro. It is not really too hard to access as a player of any skill level. What we will do to start this build off is at level 1 we take Way of the Blade. This is critical strike and now happens every 3rd basic attack and deals an additional 25% of your basic attack damage. So it makes that passive on your W stronger, makes it happen a little bit sooner, gives it a little bit more of an edge to it. At 4, I love this tier. This is the tier that Blizzard should strive to have on every hero. It's so flexible, I love it. For the sake of just picking one for this build, as it does build directly into the passive, we're going to go Deflection, and Deflection reads that while Advancing Strikes is active, you take 25% reduced damage from hero basic attacks. So long as you are hitting something and you keep your passive up, you literally have a constant block. It's a pretty beautiful talent. There are 2 ways to go here on level 7. The one that I prefer to go is Burning Blade. This gives Samuro a little bit of wave clear that you didn't think that he had before, and it is pretty cool as splash damage in team fights as well. Allows you to get into either heavy frontline comps or other melee comps. Really get in there, shake things up a little, do some AoE damage that people probably weren't expecting. If you don't want to go Burning Blade, another one that I think is really good for this build specifically is Crushing Blows, which is the critical strike, now holds 2 charges and deals an additional 25% of your basic attack damage. This does, as a matter of fact, stack onto our level 1 choice that already has 25% of your basic attack damage on there. This ups it to 50%. So, entirely up to you. Either or works for the sake of this video. We're going to go Burning Blade. At level 10, both of his ults are amazing. I just have to say that. However, for this build, as I said, this is definitely the most accessible build to play, the easiest way to approach Samuro. We're going to go Blade Storm. And the one thing to notice about Blade Storm, actually there's 2 things to notice about Blade Storm. The 2 things to notice about Blade Storm are that A, it is unstoppable. While you are in Blade Storm, you can't be CC'd. There's no CC that's going to take you out of it. That's amazing. That's so cool. The other thing to notice, though, is that is a 110-second cooldown. That is over a minute. That's almost 2 minutes. That's close to 2 minutes. That's 2 minutes! 2 minutes that you're allowed to use your ult on. That is a fraction of most games. A significant fraction of most games. So we're going to go Blade Storm there at 10. For this build, there are a number of ways that you can go that emphasize the very accessible basic attack strategy for this build. For me, that is either Shikuchi. Could be pronouncing that totally wrong, sounds really funny though, which is your Windwalk teleports you, very cool mobility that's added onto your E, a little bit of a blink there that maybe Samuro didn't even need. If you're looking to stick directly to the perks coming out of his basic attacks, Mirrored Steel is a great option to go. Basic attacks against heroes reduce the cooldown of Mirror Image by 1 second. So again, for the sake of this build, Mirrored Steel is the way that we're going to go. At 16, there are a couple ways to do this. Obviously, if you have teammates with a lot of CC or consistent CC, such as Jaina, Malfurion, Merciless Strikes is an amazing talent to take. It is Executioner that doesn't have to proc. It is just every single attack that you land on a CC'd target is going to be a critical strike. Otherwise, I would recommend Press the Attack, which builds off of Samuro's passive again, and this reads that while Advancing Strikes is active, basic attacks will increase your attack speed by 15% up to 60%. And I will show you guys that a 60% attack speed increase on Samuro is insane. At 20 for this build, I go Blade Master's Pursuit. This reads that Advancing Strikes grants an additional 15% bonus movement speed, and its duration is increased by 2 seconds. This is very similar to the Seething Hatred functionality on Vala. It basically means that your passive stays up longer and benefits you further. This is kind of the cherry on top to making sure that your autos are getting that value, the maximum value out of them. So with this build, guys, again, I have to reiterate that this is definitely the most accessible build to play on Samuro. But if you are trying to learn Samuro and you want to just have a very accessible, easy way to play him, this is the way to go. As soon as Advancing Strikes gets going here, the damage just ramps up, and it's every third auto because of the talents we chose, and that 60% increase is just insane. I'm getting hypnotized watching this. Your mirror images also benefit from this attack speed and the critical strikes. All of your talented in benefits for your auto attacks do benefit them as well. The second build that we're going to go over here is a build that I am much more fond of, but again, now the very first thing that I have to point out here, the next two builds that I'm going to explain to you guys are much harder to play. This build that we're going to go over has to do with Samuro's mirror image, his Q, the illusions that he can put out. This build starts with Way of the Illusion at 1. It's a quest talent, and it reads that every time one of your images critically strikes a hero, you gain 0.5 attack damage up to 20. After hitting 40 heroes, gain an additional 20 attack damage. This is a great questing talent. It's pretty easy to max out if you can manage your mirror images correctly, and it's super rewarding in the late game. This is a base increase to his attack damage. Very cool, very awesome, I love it. We're going to go with Mirage. This again builds into the potency of your mirror images, and it's also a very good mage counter. And actually, anyone ability powered, and we're seeing people like Alarak come out who are melee assassins who focus on ability power driven damage. Mirage is a great talent. Grants you and your images 2 charges of spell block, reducing damage from the next enemy ability against you by 50%. This can hold up to 2 charges. And the thing is, this does not fall off over time. It has to be triggered and procced with 2 separate abilities. Phantom Pain is 100% the way to go on this. Phantom Pain reads, critical strikes deal an additional 40% of your basic attack damage for each image you have active. This can be up to 80% additional attack damage. Do I need to explain that any further? At level 10, deceivingly, there are 2 ways that you can go with this. Obviously, you think that if you're building this build around your clones, your mirror images, you want to go Illusion Master. I think Illusion Master is really cool. However, I want to say something really cool about Bladestorm in this build, so we're going to take it, and I'm going to show you guys what I mean. At 13, again, Mirrored Steel. This builds into your clones. This is the way to go. Its basic attacks against heroes reduce the cooldown of mirror image by 1 second. Pretty self-explanatory. This is a great talent to take when you're building around your mirror images. If you can have them up more often, Samuro doesn't have mana. You can just spam mirror images. It's a great talent. Like, again, essential for this build. At 16, there are a couple of ways that you can go with this. Obviously, things like Merciless Strikes are situationally great. Harsh Winds is great as well. Press the Attack is awesome to keep that attack speed up because your clones benefit from it as well, which means that you can get more clones out with more frequency. There are a ton of different ways to go on this. You can pick whatever you would like for this build, and just for the sake of testing this out here, I do still go Press the Attack. Now, level 20, and where I explain why we take Bladestorm. Dance of Death, the upgrade to Bladestorm at level 20, reads simply, your images use Bladestorm when you do. So good. We can see that this bonus attack damage has you striking individually for about 500 damage every critical while those are active. Your critical strike damage as well that you can proc has you hitting at that 500. This is just this is a ton of damage. You can't play down how much damage this is and how much burst damage this is. Obviously, those crits are insane, and your clones benefit from it as well. The one thing, though, that I am going to show you guys, and the reason that the Blade Storm and Dance of Death upgrade are so cool to me, is basically because of this engage right here. Last but not least, the final build that I have been using for Samuro and messing around with for Samuro does have to do with Windwalk. The very first talent that you're going to take for this is Way of the Wind. It is a quest talent. There's a very specific functionality of this talent that if you do not pay attention to is going to bite you in the butt way later in the game if you don't manage to finish this in a timely manner. You have to be consciously paying attention to this and doing this, otherwise if you can't finish this quest, you wasted a tier, and you wasted a whole build, you probably threw the game away. Attacking a hero from Windwalk increases the movement speed bonus of Windwalk by 1.25% up to 25%. The reward after hitting 20 heroes, the duration before Windwalk can be broken by damage is increased to 2.5 seconds. This is not only an increase to that break time, but an increase to the speed in which you move as well. At level 4, we're going to go One with the Wind. This reads simply, takes less damage while windwalking, internally says, while stealthed by windwalk, you take 60% reduced damage from all sources. This synergizes very, very well with the 2.5 second break time on the stealth that you now have from completing that quest. So the entire duration that you're stealth, and especially those 2.5 seconds, means that you're taking 60% reduced damage from all sources. This is huge survivability for Samuro. I love this talent. Totally mandatory for this build. For this build as well, I like going Crushing Blows. This reads the critical strike now has 2 charges, and your critical strikes deal an additional 25% of your basic attack damage. Gives a little bit of potency, also gives the 2 charges to your W, which means you have a little bit more liberal use when you want to pop in those crits, when you want to use it for the burst damage, and you'll see that burst damage is very important in this build. A very key talent here that I love, and you can build this one of 2 ways, and I'll explain both ways. Kawarimi, I am really good at pronouncing these, aren't I? Kawarimi reads that Windwalk creates an image at your location that will continue doing whatever you were doing when you went into Windwalk. And that's pretty cool, but I have to say that Shikuchi is by far my favorite talent. It reads Windwalk teleports you a short distance in the direction that you're currently facing. This is a blink on a stealth. This is like a more direct, cooler version of Greymane's Eyes in the Dark. Into stealth, you're just off into the like a shadow in the night. At 16, Harsh Winds. Attacking a hero from Windwalk causes them to take 30% increased damage from you and your images for 3 seconds. This is not a team vulnerability, this is specifically damage for Samuro, and you have control over it. Harsh Winds is definitely the way to go, and this roofs off, caps off, the whole thing comes with the cherry on top at level 20, Wind Strider. Windwalk's cooldown is reduced by 6 seconds. This puts this ability on a 6-second cooldown. You can just use this all of the time in and out of combat. It's incredible. I love it. Using this build correctly, guys, is going to look something like this. It's very divey. It's very dive in, dive out. Make sure you're using that vulnerability on the reduced cooldown of Windwalk and making use of the insane stealth and mobility that this build brings. It's going to look a little something like this. Alright guys, those are my 3 builds for Samuro right now. I am sure I'm going to find a lot of different ways that I want to experiment with him, but again, the 3 builds in this video were his passive, his Q, and his E. I love all 3 of these builds. I think they're very interesting approaches. Obviously, the one that works around his passive is the easiest, most accessible to use. I will have a full written out guide on Heroes Nexus for Samuro to help you guys better understand and break down what we're doing, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. You can take a little bit something away from it, take some of these builds, apply them to your own gameplay, get out there, and kick some ass with Samuro. So thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you next time.